The wind had been kicking dust across the open plains all afternoon, turning the horizon into a blurred ribbon of gold. The wedding guests had already ridden off toward town, trailing laughter and clinking glasses. Only 2 riders remained on the ridge, Calder Hart, the quiet rancher who'd married with a lowered head and a shy smile, and Ilara, the young bride who still held her bouquet like she wasn't sure whether to clutch it or drop it. The horse beneath her shifted uneasily, sensing something was wrong long before Calder caught the signs himself. He noticed only when she winced, barely at first. Like a flicker of pain she tried to swallow. Her fingers tightened on the saddle horn. Her posture stiffened and her breath caught in her throat. Calder, trailing just a few feet behind, leaned forward and slowed his horse. "Ilara?" His voice had that steady, low rumble he was known for, the kind that calmed skittish mares and rowdy cattle. "You all right up there?" She didn't turn fully, just tilted her chin, enough for him to see that her lips had gone pale. "I'm fine," she said, but the words were small, thin as paper, almost lost to the wind. He clicked his tongue, nudging his horse closer. "Fine doesn't look like you're about to fall off your mount." At that, her shoulders trembled. The facade cracked, and when she tried shifting her weight in the saddle, a sharp cry escaped her, raw, quick, frightened. Calder's heart kicked hard. "Whoa now, Ilara, easy." He brought his horse alongside hers, gripping her reins to stop her horse from pacing nervously. "Tell me what's hurt." Her fingers pressed against her lower hip just above her thigh. She wasn't crying yet, not fully, but fear shimmered in her eyes, the kind that came from trying to be brave too long. "Make it fast." Her voice broke and she sucked a breath through her teeth. "It hurts down there." Instantly, all the tension in Calder's shoulders snapped taut, but not the wrong kind of tension. The protective kind, the kind that made him forget everything, except the woman swaying precariously on her saddle. "All right," he murmured, steady as river rock. "I hear you. I'll make it right." She looked ashamed, like she'd disappointed someone. "I didn't want to ruin today," she whispered. "It started hurting after the ceremony. I stepped wrong coming down the chapel steps. It's getting worse." So it wasn't nerves. It wasn't panic. It wasn't anything people whispered about wedding nights. It was real pain. Calder exhaled, a deep, grounding breath that cleared the dust from his thoughts. "Ilara, look at me." She finally lifted her eyes to his. "You ain't ruining anything. You're hurt, that's all, and I'm gonna take care of it. But I need you off that horse before you fall." The mare's ears were twitching anxiously now, reacting to her rider's distress. Calder swung down with practiced ease, boots thumping softly in the dirt. He reached for Ilara, palms open so she knew he wasn't rushing her. "You trust me?" he asked quietly. Her lips trembled. I'm trying." "That's enough." He set his hands gently at her waist, feeling her tense. "I'm just gonna help you down slow." She inhaled sharply as he eased her weight toward him. The pain clearly shot through her leg again. She bit down on a sound that still clawed its way out. Calder tightened his grip, catching her fully when her knees buckled. "I got you," he said, voice firm but soft. He drew her against him carefully, the scent of pine and dust clinging to his coat enveloping her. "Lean on me." She did, trembling. He led her toward a patch of soft earth beneath a lone juniper tree, the branches whispering above them as they settled down. Calder eased her onto the ground, keeping her legs supported. She hissed again, hand gripping his arm. "Easy, easy," he soothed. "I ain't touching anything that'll hurt you worse. Just need to see where the strain is." Her face flushed, embarrassed. "It feels stupid. I shouldn't be this weak." "You're not weak," Calder said instantly. The firmness in his tone made her eyes widen. "You hear me? Ain't a weak bone in you." A tear slid down her cheek anyway. He tilted her chin gently with a roughened thumb. "Pain's pain. Doesn't matter if it's a sprain or a snake bite. It's real and you don't gotta apologize for it." She wiped her face, nodding. Calder inspected her hip and thigh, not touching her directly at first, tracing the air like a sketch so she knew what he was doing. "Tell me when it hurts," he said. "It already does," she whispered. "All right. Then tell me where it gets worse." Slowly, carefully, he guided her leg into a different angle. She winced sharply. "There!" she gasped. "It's worse there?" He nodded, not flinching at her pain. "Pulled muscle," he murmured. "Looks like you strained it bad coming down those steps. Maybe even twisted it riding with the wrong posture because of the dress." Ilara swallowed. Is it serious?" Serious enough you're not riding another mile, he said. Not tonight. Her breath stopped. But your ranch is still an hour away. I'll carry you if I have to. Her eyes widened again. Calder. I said I'll make it right, he answered simply. And I meant it. He moved behind her, bracing his knees so her back could rest against his chest. The moment she leaned into him, her whole body softened, not with comfort, not yet, but with the surrender of someone too exhausted to pretend anymore. The prairie around them glowed with the last amber streaks of sunset. The wind had gentled. Even the horses stood quiet as if sensing the tenderness settling into the moment. Alara's breathing slowed. You're shaking, Calder murmured. And I'm scared. Ain't nothing out here gonna touch you, he promised. Not while I'm here. But what if I slowed your life down already? She whispered. What if I'm more trouble than... No. His voice was low, steady, unyielding. You married me today. That means your troubles are mine to carry. And I ain't afraid of a little hurt or a long night. Her eyes glistened in the fading light. Calder tightened his arms around her, careful not to press the injured muscle, just enough to let her feel she wasn't alone. She exhaled shakily, head resting against his shoulder. You're safe, he whispered again. I'll get you home, one way or another. And in that quiet hour, with dusk wrapping the plains in violet shadows, Alara finally believed him. The stars were just beginning to wake across the deepening sky by the time Calder coaxed Alara into his arms. She tried to protest at first, weakly, breathlessly, but the pain flared too sharply in her hip for her to argue long. Calder lifted her slowly, carefully, as though afraid she might break like spun glass. His hands were firm, steady, and warm against her back. Her arms instinctively looped around his shoulders, not out of boldness but necessity. Her cheek rested against his collarbone, and she could feel the way his heartbeat stayed slow and strong, unbothered by the weight of her, unbothered by anything except getting her home safely. You doing all right? He asked, his voice near her ear. Just don't drop me, she whispered, a tremor running through her. I won't, Calder murmured. Had a bull try to take me down once. Didn't drop him either. A faint, breathless laugh slipped from her, more exhale than sound. But Calder took it as a victory, a sign she wasn't swallowed entirely by pain. He carried her toward the horses, but one look at her face told him riding wasn't an option. Even the smallest jostle made her fingers tighten painfully on his shirt. He made a decision then, quick, quiet, and absolute. We're walking, he said. Her eyes flew open. Calder, that's hours. Not hours, he said. Hour and a half. Maybe 2, and I'll walk it twice if I gotta. But you can't carry me that whole way. He met her gaze steadily. Watch me. She swallowed hard, emotion complicating the pain twisting her features. Calder, seeing it, adjusted his hold so she didn't strain anything, cradling her with the gentle certainty of someone who'd done this 1,000 times for injured calves and foals, but somehow did it softer now, because she wasn't livestock. She was his wife, a new word still clumsy on his tongue but somehow deeply rooted in his chest. He whistled twice, and the horses began following obediently behind him. Then he started the long walk across the open land, boots crunching through patches of dry grass and scattered stones. The first few minutes were quiet except for Alara's careful breaths. Wind brushed her hair against his throat. Distant coyotes yipped somewhere far off, but nothing nearby dared approach. Calder walked like a man who would face down anything in the dark and dare it to try him. After a while, Alara whispered, I'm heavy. No, he said without missing a step. You don't have to pretend. I'm not pretending. His tone deepened, not angry, but insistent. You're light. Even if you weren't, I'd still carry you. Her grip on his shirt tightened in response. Silence settled again, but this time it wasn't so strained. Calder kept his pace steady and rhythmic, matching his breathing. Every few minutes he'd check her, shifting her weight slightly to ease pressure from her hip, murmuring small reassurances, short words, simple but grounding. You're doing all right. Pain easing at all? Almost there, I promise. At one point she lifted her head enough to look around. The stars. They're coming out so fast. Calder glanced up briefly. Sky's clearer out here. Folks in town forget that. She leaned her forehead back against him, exhausted. I didn't grow up anywhere with skies like this. I know, he said quietly. But you will. You sound sure. I am. Why? Calder hesitated, not because he didn't know the answer, but because saying it out loud felt too big, too raw. At last he murmured, "Because I meant what I said earlier. You married me. Means you ain't facing anything alone now. Not pain, not fear, not long roads home." Ilara's breath trembled, but she didn't cry. Instead, she buried her face slightly deeper against him, hiding whatever emotion he'd stirred. The land stretched on in gentle slopes, dust shimmering under moonlight. The air cooled as night settled fully, but Calder's body stayed warm around hers. Every so often he'd adjust her so her leg wasn't twisted. Every so often she'd exhale in relief at the change. "How's the pain now?" he asked after another stretch of silence. "It throbs," she admitted, "but less sharp." "That's good. Once we get home, I'll fix up a compress. My ma taught me a trick for strained muscles." "Did she?" Ilara asked softly. "Mm-hmm. She was tougher than anyone else on the ranch. If I got hurt, she'd say, 'You're fine, Calder. But sit still so I can prove it.'" A faint smile ghosted over his lips. "I figure you're a bit like her." Ilara blinked in surprise. "Me? Tough? You rode for nearly an hour with an injury. You didn't cry once till the pain got real bad, and you still tried to walk yourself earlier." He shifted her weight again. "Careful. Yeah, you're tough." Her throat tightened. "I didn't feel tough. That's usually when folks are toughest." They reached the riverbank that marked the halfway point. Calder stopped for a moment, lowering her gently, not onto the ground, but onto his lap as he settled onto a flat rock. He kept her cradled against him, one arm behind her back, the other easing pressure off her thigh. "Hurting worse?" he asked. "No," she whispered. "Just tired. Rest a breath then. I'll carry you again when you're ready." Ilara looked up at him, moonlight catching on her lashes. "You don't even look winded." "I said I'd make it right," he answered. "That means all of it." "Not halfway." Her gaze softened, slowly, reluctantly, but undeniably. She hadn't asked for a husband like Calder. She barely knew him beyond his quiet steadiness and the way he'd spoken softly during their vows. She certainly hadn't expected her first night as a married woman to be spent injured and afraid in the middle of open land. Yet somehow being tucked against him like this felt safe. Safer than anything she remembered in a long time. When she was steady again, Calder rose, lifting her effortlessly. The horses trailed them like loyal shadows as he continued. The walk home. The ranch lights finally appeared in the distance, small, warm, welcoming glows against the dark prairie. Ilara exhaled shakily at the sight. Calder felt the breath and murmured, "Told you we'd get there." She nodded against him. "Calder, thank you." "You don't gotta thank me." "I do," she whispered. "You didn't have to carry me all this way." His arms tightened around her just a little. "Ilara, I'm your husband. That means I carry you when you're hurt. I stand with you when you're scared. And I stay till you're all right. That's what I promised, whether anyone heard me say it or not." The words settled deep inside her, steady, warm, anchoring her more than his arms already were. As they crossed the final stretch toward the ranch house, Ilara closed her eyes and let herself believe something she hadn't dared before. She wasn't a burden. She wasn't slowing his life down. She was someone he chose to carry, someone he was willing to walk miles for. And in the quiet rhythm of Calder's footsteps, she realized she felt safer than she ever had.